Story 1. I saw two men outside my apartment having an argument. One had a little girl with him who could not be older than 5. The other man launched into a tirade, finishing with this insult. "Your wife is nothing but a dishonorable woman, and I bet she is too," pointing at the child. Story 2. My ex-husband's girlfriend told me I am jealous of her because her daughter is alive and mine is dead. She literally said this to me in front of my sons. Don't worry, karma took care of her. She has had a lot of plastic surgery on her face, and the last time I saw her, she was looking like Mickey Rourke. Story 3. I was born with a congenital problem and had a tiny chance of survival. Obviously, I made it. In my first year of college, I brought home my first boyfriend ever. He was a chubby nerd with aviator glasses. We loved Mel Brooks movies and met at a summer program for high-achieving students before our senior year in high school. My father hated him on the spot, even though my boyfriend was as straight-laced as could be. This wasn't like he drove up on a motorcycle with a cigarette behind his ear or grabbed me in front of my family. We were both straight-A students with scholarships. The day after he met him, my father called me over to the car as he and my mother were leaving. As casually as telling me they would be back in an hour, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Knowing the person you have become, it would have been better if you had died as a baby." Story 4. My stepmother told my 12-year-old brother that he would turn out to be a sociopath and end up in prison. She said that she hates him and that he was the reason for her and my father's marital issues. Story 5. A coworker at my former job found out her mother had cancer and requested a few days off using her vacation time so she could take her to chemotherapy appointments. The president of the company acted like she cared, but then went to the coworker's manager and told the manager to be prepared to let the coworker go if she took too much time off. Story 6. I was not wanted. My parents told me every day that I was a mistake. I was blamed for everything that went wrong in their lives. I spent the first 17 years of my life apologizing for my own existence. I was beaten severely, and to this day, I have never been told I was loved or wanted. I am 66 now. I live quietly with my dog. He loves me. Story 7. We have become accustomed to life without you, my dad said after not talking to me for 15 years because of his religion, while I cried. Story 8. Mom was supposed to have an abortion. I wish she had. This was said by my sister to me. It is not true. I cut my sister out of my life after my parents died. Story 9. My mother told my sister that she had bedroom eyes and would be lucky to make it through high school without getting pregnant. My sister was 6. Story 10. It is definitely not the worst, but it is the most entertaining terrible thing. My ex-husband said in court while fighting for full custody of our children because of my intention to move house with them, that parenting them is a burden, but he cannot just let me do whatever I want. I was awarded full custody. Story 11. Cop here. While dealing with a routine case of my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend is here and won't leave. A surprising twist. The man was seeing both of them simultaneously. The ex-girlfriend yelled at the current girlfriend, "That's why you lost your kids," referring to custody, not death. The current girlfriend responded, "That's why your baby was assaulted." As you can imagine, they were both very unpleasant people. Story 12. My time to shine. My mother has always been emotionally unstable. I grew up feeling deeply scared and depressed. I was always walking on eggshells to avoid causing an outburst from her. When I was 8 years old, I dared to write in my diary that I wanted to kill myself. One day, I came back from school and was welcomed by my enraged mother, who had just read my secret journal. She was furious. I learned that day that I would go directly to hell if I killed myself. For her, I was only trying to manipulate her feelings, so she screamed at me, "You want to commit suicide? Let's go buy a rope so you can hang yourself." Story 13. My mom said to me when I was 4 years old, "You need mental help." I was trying to tell my mom I was being sexually abused by my own dad. Her words still haunt me. Story 14. Tonight, I am going to let you do things with your mother that I would never let any other man do. But you have to remember, you can never tell anyone about this. My mother's boyfriend said this to me when I was 10 years old, with my mother sitting right there. I had no idea what he was talking about, and I did not realize how wrong it was until many years later. Story 15. My stepmom would often tell me, "I'll go to jail with a smile on my face for killing you." The first time I remember her saying that to me, I was 7. Story 16. I was 15, and my sister was 9. Our 33-year-old father told her that my mother should have aborted her. This upset me. I started mouthing off, saying, "What kind of father says that to a child?" I repeat, what kind of father says that to a child, let alone his own? Not a real man. Even at 15, I had more courage than he did. Story 17. United States healthcare would be fixed by making people pay up front and refusing treatment to those who cannot afford it. I have no response for that. Say what you want about personal attacks, not arguing the point, but there is nothing to debate here. It is a difference of opinion, and you are a terrible person. Story 18. I have a sudden onset knee problem. It is really affecting my life as I cannot do as much work as I used to. When my husband realized how many chores he would have to help with, he demanded that I see a doctor and get better because he will not be making accommodations for me. Story 19. They are my children. I will do what I want with them. A pedophile screamed at us in prison when we confronted him. Story 20. To me personally, it was not that bad, but the most memorable one I can recall. I forgot my key at work once and had to commute an hour back at night on the subway in a dangerous area to get it. My parents wanted my brother to leave his girlfriend's place to open the apartment door for me. We are roommates and my parents live far away. He was livid about it and did not want to, so I ended up just doing the hour back and forth commute. He told me, "If you get assaulted, just know that you deserve it." It was a text, so it was not as bad as it would have been face to face. I do not know why he was so mad when I already agreed I was going to go back and get it myself instead of making him leave his girlfriend's place. I took a screenshot of that text and sent it to his girlfriend and told her, "Look who you are dating." The thing is that he sent that vulgar text in the family group chat. Story 21. Probably not the worst, but it is the most recent and came to mind. I sell glasses for a living. An older man came in to pick up his new glasses. Like many, he wanted to donate his old ones. We have a collection box for a nonprofit organization that collects old glasses to help people in need in other countries get glasses. After I showed him where the collection box was, he turned and looked at me and said, "Make sure no poor kid in Africa gets these." I was taken aback by what he said and thought I misheard him. He then followed up with, "Because if you give these to poor kids for free, it will hurt the local economy." At this point, I was at a loss for words and did not know what to say, so I let the awkward silence linger. Eventually, I handed him his cleaning wipes and told him to have a nice day. I think he was offended by my silence. A few minutes later, I was in the back room doing paperwork and overheard him talking to my coworker, saying how rude I was. Story 22. A mother telling her son, "You are not mentally ill. You are just broken." This woman is a licensed therapist. Story 23. Back in high school, I overheard boys talking about a girl in our class. One of them said he wanted to cut off her breasts and mount them on his wall. Story 24. I was slowly discovering that I had many people in my life with personality disorders. My mom and I were watching a news segment about young people causing problems, and she said, "Ugh, sometimes I just wish I didn't have kids." I replied, "I don't think anybody doubts that." She said, "Tell me about it." I think she literally forgot I was her son for a moment, but it bothered me even more that she didn't notice my subtle burn. Certain exes have said awful things as well, but those always came from a place of malice. My mom was accidentally sharing her real feelings and just let the mask slip for a moment. Over time, that ended up being a really hard thing to hear. Story 25. I remember at the start of COVID-19 someone yelling a racial slur out their car window at an Asian person behind me, and I had never seen racism that blatant before. Story 26. My dad told me when I was a child that I was the reason he smoked. I will never forget that. He died of cancer years later. Story 27. I had liver failure as a teenager due to a suicide attempt by overdose to escape my father. I was found after 14 hours, and my father told me on the way to the emergency room that he hoped he could watch them force charcoal down my throat so he could watch me vomit, and that he hoped I would be in even more pain. Unfortunately for him, it was too late for charcoal, so instead he took pictures of me vomiting neon bile and laughed at me. He sent the pictures to everyone. Story 28. Someone on Reddit once sent me a direct message to say the National Socialist German Workers' Party should have done a better job exterminating my family. Story 29. The emergency room nurse asked the paramedic, "Why are you bringing me a corpse?" In front of me, the corpse was my spouse. They had a stroke but were still alive. The paramedic said, "Corpses don't flinch, right?" That interaction is engraved in my mind forever. Story 30. When a former coworker I trusted said he could support me if he wanted, and I told my parents, I was 34, he was 63. My mother said, "That's so nice, and you worry that no one will find you attractive." I was visiting them and we were in a restaurant. My dad and the people at the table next to us just froze with their mouths open. She says things like this all the time, but that was the worst. Also, I never said that. I said, "Why can't I attract someone who isn't a psychopath?" Story 31. A man was in the back of an Uber driving away from a bar where he had just been tossed and roughed up by the bouncer. He yelled out the window, "We could have been best friends in a past life," in a strong Australian accent. Haha. Story 32. Not heard, per se, but received as an anonymous direct message right here on Reddit. Filthy Wokenazi freak, you disgust me. I hope you get gang raped by a bunch of offensive term until you choke on your own tears while getting infected with HIV through the bleeding sores in your intestine. And who knows, you may actually enjoy it. Vile subhuman animals like you will be lynched first when the race war starts. You sided with the enemy and that will not go unpunished. Get ready. Story 33. Local forum where members knew each other in real life. The first man told the second man to die in a fire less than 2 months after the second man lost his daughter in a car fire. Story 34. I have a pretty long nose. My whole family makes fun of my nose, and of course it hurts me, but they say I am joking. Okay, but why are they focused on my nose? They also send me videos of people getting surgeries. My cousin once told me to get a nose job in front of a hall filled with people. Story 35. When my sister with Down syndrome was born, my father's sister-in-law, who was pregnant, had a genetic test done. When my cousin was born, my father's sister-in-law said directly to my mother, with my father's brother fully supporting her, that if my cousin had been disabled like my sister, they would have aborted her. To be clear, I support a pregnant person's right to terminate for any reason. Your body, your choice. But telling a parent of a disabled child something like that to their face in their own home while they are holding the disabled child is just horrible. Especially when you know that the doctors told the parents, your own family by marriage, that if the child's heart stopped, they would not even try to revive her because of the disability. Story 36. A colleague I work with is pretty slow. I would guess he has a learning disability. However, he is also incredibly kind and will do anything for you. He has a baby on the way and will be a first-time father. Another colleague asked him, "What made you think you should be allowed to have children? What a cruel person." Story 37. I told you I was HIV positive. I was at work and overheard my boss screaming at a man who I knew had been going home with him. The man was upset because he contracted HIV from my boss. My manager was upset that he mentioned it. Story 38. We were having a lot of problems in general, but the main issue was that I was working hard to provide and maintain good insurance coverage. We were traveling to my wife's wealthy friend's house, as her husband had family wealth. As we arrived, my wife said to me, "A real man provides for his family. Look how nice their house is." Story 39. I wouldn't let my friend hit my car after he basically broke 6 blinkers and said, "I don't want anything from you. I bought this guy food a couple of times when he had no money. I don't talk to him anymore because he is fake." He started taking pills and ignored everyone who cared for him except his 3 other drug buddies. His girlfriend also left him because he cheated multiple times after she gave him chances. I am happy I am not associated with that person anymore. Story 40. As a parent, the things I am seeing that people have told their children in this thread absolutely shatter my heart. You all deserve so much better, and I wish I could give each of you a dad hug. Story 41. Get over it, it was a long time ago. I was told after sharing with my mother the sexual abuse I endured for years starting when I was just 5 years old. And my abuser was also my alcoholic father. Story 42. You enticed it, my mother said. I was 19 and working with a man who, let's just say, took advantage of me. He was about 54 and got me into a secluded spot for work-related business. That's when he assaulted me. I decided to be upfront with my mother instead of letting it eat away at me. She told me, "You can't tell anyone. You weren't taken advantage of, and honestly, you being gay, you enticed him to do it." Since then, my mother has wondered why I don't talk to her the way I did when I was younger. This is primarily the reason why I stopped. Story 43. Sat in hospital with a 15-year-old that I was supporting in the mental health service, as she did not feel safe to be on her own. She was living with family friends in a pretty abusive situation. While waiting for the mental health team in the hospital, she called her parent. She was crying and telling her how low she felt and the abuse she was suffering, hoping she could live with them again. I heard this woman say, "Okay, honey, I have to go back to work now," and hang up. I was infuriated and tried hard to contain it, but I did get a little angry and expressed my displeasure. I was just beyond upset for this poor kid. She is a cool kid, super smart and compassionate. She deserved so much better, as does any child. Of course, I was happy to support her. I sat all day with her and would do it a million times over. But it should not have been me. Many people have said terrible things to me over the years, but consoling that kid that day really broke me. I could not even hug her while she broke down, wondering why she was not worthy of love and safety. It absolutely broke me. I will be recovering from her situation for a long time. Story 44. I visited a dance club in the mid-1990s with a man I knew who experienced mental health challenges after serving in Iraq. He pointed out the most attractive woman in the place to me and said, "Watch this." He then walked up to her, inhaled deeply through his nose and said, "Jesus Christ, ma'am, is that smell coming from your feet or elsewhere?" About an hour later, he was with her in the back seat of his Isuzu. Story 45. It's extremely funny. I was taking out the trash before going to work and saw two homeless women arguing in front of the building. One was screaming insults at the other. When they noticed me, the woman being yelled at said, "Shush! Don't insult me like that." The woman screaming replied, "I'm insulting you? You just said you would fart in my mouth." Story 46. When I was a kid, I was riding a city bus with my parents when two women boarded. They were having a very heated conversation. I clearly remember one woman saying, "My man isn't gay. He is on the down low." Took me several years before I learned what that meant. Story 47. I am going to insert my private part in your backside, place my hand on your intimate area, and stimulate myself. Overheard at a punk rock show in the 1980s. Story 48. Man at coffee shop trying to get waitress's number. "You're so hot. I'd eat the corn out of your shirt." He did not get the number and was banned from the store. Story 49. I'm a server at an upscale restaurant and once served a bone marrow dish to a obviously wealthy couple at the bar. I set it down in front of them, explained the components of the dish, asked if I could bring them anything else, and the man proceeded to ask me, "What kind of bone are we dealing with here? Homeless femur? Teenage crackhead?" Then he laughed heartily at his own cruel joke. My mind literally felt like it seized up, and I walked away as fast as I could without saying a word. That was one of the most vile things I have ever heard someone say out loud. I live in a city where homelessness and fentanyl are major problems, and this man just... Wow. I literally feel sick to my stomach just remembering his face and how amused he was at his own cruelty. Story 50. I overheard a coworker ask another coworker, "What language do they speak in England?" This man was in his 40s. Okay, maybe not the most surprising, but pretty incredible. Story 51. I was taken into care because all my caregivers were physically and mentally abusive. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me, and he has always hated me for some reason. He also beat and humiliated me. I also have younger sisters, but he was nice to them. I was the only child in the family who was regularly beaten and humiliated by our parents. When I was in care, I lived with some very normal, safe families. My brother disliked me further and would say to other relatives that I was privileged and spoiled. Story 52. I once heard my husband's grandmother say to my mother-in-law, "The only reason you are alive is because I did not have enough money to have an abortion until it was too late." Story 53. My mother called me a failed investment because I had a nervous breakdown and did not finish college on time. Story 54. Not the worst thing, but I was talking to my sister one night shortly after I had miscarried my second pregnancy. I said "my children" by accident, and she corrected me, saying "your child." Story 55. Someone on Reddit once told me I should kill myself. Also, someone once told me I shouldn't have been aborted. There are some real gems here. Story 56. I can't think of one overheard, but one that cut me pretty deep, especially now in hindsight, was something my mom said to me regarding my struggle with school. I was complaining about how I didn't understand the way one of my teachers taught. This was quite frequent. I struggled a lot to understand lessons, which came out as complaints about the teachers not teaching effectively. I was having my mom sign another failed test, and I complained, "The teacher doesn't teach right." So my mom snapped, "Another teacher doesn't teach right? You don't think it's you yet." It hurt badly at the time. It hurt even worse when I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in my late 20s. It hurts even more now that I'm talking to my doctor about possible autism. I've always tried my best. It crushed me to be told I was the problem, which is true. I was neurodivergent and couldn't follow the neurotypical curriculum. It wasn't designed for me. But my mom or even the school could have noticed my struggle and helped me, maybe. Instead, I was left to fall through the cracks. Now at 32, I'm beyond exhausted from having to work extra hard just to be normal in society, and I'm ready to die. It's just a stupid existence. Story 57. I was riding in a car with my wife's sister. My wife's mother's long-distance boyfriend had just died, and my wife's sister did not like him. Wife's sister said, "When I heard he died, I felt like God answered my prayers." My wife and I, who were Christians, looked at each other with very wide eyes. Story 58. I heard a girl break up with her boyfriend by saying, "I need to find someone else." I kept thinking about the fact that she said need and not want. He was crushed. Story 59. You will be looking up at me from the bad side of the ice. And another one I heard someone say that was both disturbing and hilarious. First, I am going to put a bullet in my head, and then I am going to put a bullet in yours. Story 60. Not me, but a friend of mine told me this story. She was an undiagnosed autistic child in the early 2000s, so communicating was different from other children. She did not want to acknowledge her stepbrother, who was a giant bully, so her dad screamed at her, calling her an ignorant little girl. Story 61. When asked if he enjoys basketball, he replies, "If I wanted to see monkeys play with a ball, I would go to the zoo." Story 62. Once I heard a mother tell her children she hates them. They were little children. My father told me he dreaded coming home to me. I guess that is fair. Undiagnosed bipolar disorder made me a miserable person to be around, and I tormented my father. We are okay now. Story 63. I was talking to someone at work about finding out my mom had cancer. I told them she had to have surgery to remove a brain tumor the size of a golf ball. A man at the table near us asked if my mom liked to play golf. I was shocked that someone would say that. Another person in the room looked at the man and said, "Wow, that was a really insensitive thing to say." Story 64. My stepmother screamed at me because everyone in my house ate my leftover birthday cake, and there was only one piece left that my little sister was putting on her plate. I asked if she could leave me some. She responded by yelling insults while storming upstairs, and then told my little sister not to speak to me anymore because she believed I was going to harm myself eventually and did not want my sister to get too attached to me. So, yeah, that is a difficult situation. Story 65. I struggled with infertility, and it was a source of deep sadness for me. My horrible, abusive grandmother told me I could not have children because God hated me and did not want more of me on earth. I became pregnant the year after she died. Story 66. You were an accident and they actually meant it. Two siblings arguing. They told this to the youngest, who was about 7 years younger. Story 67. My narcissistic mother was holding my newborn son. She looked me directly in the face and said, "I never loved you as much as I love him." Story 68. A middle-aged woman is arguing with her elderly mother outside my apartment door. The woman says, "You told me you wished you had an abortion." The mother replies, "I don't remember saying that." The woman responds, "I can't forget it." Story 69. I had a British classmate once. When we were in physical education, I just couldn't help noticing him stutter. Now that wasn't nerves. He was one of, if not the calmest guy I have ever witnessed. Meanwhile, I was not very smart back then, so I asked him, "Why do British people stutter a lot?" He stared at me for 5 seconds. He turned away. That wasn't the end of it. For 2 years since, I have been stuttering a lot. Karma, I guess. Story 70. My grandmother often told me that she wished she were dead when we were alone in the house. I was 10. Story 71. You should harm yourself. That was said to me one year by 3 different people who did not know me after I admitted to being suicidal. Story 72. A family member once told me they hoped I was sad, so that they could have the knowledge of it happening and refused to help me. Story 73. Apart from the usual wish you had never been born. I recall as a young adult apologizing to my mother for my behavior as a child. I said, "I was such a little rascal." She replied, "We kept trying to tell you." Story 74. I heard about a minor property dispute between Minnie Driver and her neighbor that escalated to a lot of nastiness. After it was resolved in the courts, he said something along the lines of, "She won, and I hope she spends every dollar on chemotherapy." Story 75. There was one point my dad said, "Self-inflicted, no sympathy," after I asked to take it easy as I was dealing with a fresh tattoo. I later stabbed myself with a pencil and said, "Self-inflicted, no sympathy." He then said, "Just because we don't sympathize doesn't mean we care." What the heck? I was 25 at the time, dealing with them treating me like this. Story 76. That's really sad. I hope you're okay though. My mom keeps telling me she wishes I wasn't born. When I think about it, it doesn't make sense. She loves my brothers but hates me. What I want to say is sometimes parents have mental health issues. Story 77. My grandmother said to my uncle, "I will never stop enabling your addictions. I have mine too. I cannot judge you for yours." My grandmother was and still is a severe alcoholic. My uncle, on the other hand, was using every substance known, and at that time was high on crack purchased from a gas station at my graduation party, despite having promised my mother he would go clean months earlier. I did not feel too bad when he ended up maxing my grandmother's credit card 10 times over to buy that crack. You get what you ask for. Story 78. I don't have a life because of you, my dad told me before the accident. He never said anything about my brother and sister, who are fully blood related. He was frustrated with my struggles as an autistic person. Story 79. My father said, "Some days I can't look at you because you look exactly like your mother. She was my mother who died by suicide when I was 2. Story 80. I can make a book of things my mom said to me alone between ages 12 and 17. I regret your sole existence. You killed my precious little daughter as she was growing up. You are just like your father. Cut deeper and kill yourself. If I suicide, you will be the reason. I gave my life and dreams for a scumbag like you. I should have aborted you. If you died, I would be able to breathe finally. Hope you get a daughter like you so you suffer as much as I do." And more. Story 81. Once my mom told me, I would say if the worst thing your partner is doing is cheating, then you are lucky. Thankfully, I told her she was insane, and I still broke up with him. Story 82. If I woke up with your face in the mirror, I would kill myself. Thanks, you middle school troublemaker. I heard he actually married, but it was for her to get to the United States and obtain a green card, and now he is divorced. He was not good looking, and I am sure he was bullied a lot, but that is no excuse. Story 83. I had a bully, and one of their friends asked if I was okay because I was writing a sad poem for class. I said I was perfectly fine. Then my bully said, "Damn, I thought I made another suicidal. Why would they say that?" Story 84. I was in a local shop and overheard one man saying to another, "So she comes home and tells me she has been assaulted." I said to her, "Who would want to harm you, you ugly person?" That was very upsetting. Story 85. Australia here. I was sitting outside at a cafe. A First Nations woman at the next table shouted at her 3-year-old, "Shut up." Story 86. When I came out to my parents, my dad's response was, "No, you're not. You're just so lonely and desperate you would do anything to make someone pretend to be your friend." Story 87. Dark as dark can be. I can't imagine what that must have been like. I hope things are better now. I remember visiting my ex-boyfriend's little sister in the hospital. She was there because she wasn't eating and had lost a lot of weight. I watched her brothers and mother constantly deny her obvious eating disorder and laugh in her face. I heard her mother say to her, as she lay starved in her hospital bed, "Why does it always have to be about you?" Story 88. I wasn't there, but it was told to me afterward. "I don't know why you're crying so much about this. You guys weren't even that close." My friend's mother said this to her when she was maybe 17 at most. Her friend had killed himself, and they were on the way back from visiting his house to pick up some things he had left for her. If you are wondering, yes, my now grown, 40-something friend has cut off all contact with her mother. Story 89. My sister told me I deserved to be harmed by our uncle. I was 8 years old when it began. It still hurts to this day hearing her say those words. Story 90. My stepfather told me I would be the reason my mother dies early. I was about 14, and my mother had been married 3 times previously. I clearly had a lot of trauma from that and from the men involved in those marriages. Story 91. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request. Story 92. I was a drug-addicted teen who wanted to get better. I went to rehabilitation and ended up being placed in a very small and specialized school for troubled kids who need more support in their daily lives, no matter what their issue is. Incoming students have an interview with the headmaster where they discuss their situation, and then the staff decide whether or not to accept the student into the school. After the decision, all staff have a meeting to discuss the new student. I only learned this near the time I was graduating, but one of the teachers told me that the headmaster, who had since retired, said to all the staff, "Don't bother getting to know her or getting too attached just yet. I predict she will probably either be back in rehabilitation or dead within a few months." Well, that never happened. I graduated with straight A's and was on my way to college to follow my dreams. My teacher told me that I proved him very wrong and was practically a model student for the school due to all my success. That headmaster was not a nice person. Story 93. When a woman admits what every man suspects is true but hopes it is not, that she just wants a man for his money. Story 94. Ex-wife to my oldest child. I wish you were never born. I hate you for starters. One day, when he was about 7 or 8, I came home from work and said, "Hello? Name." He looked at me and said, "My mom told me I'm not allowed to talk to you." Needless to say, my marriage ended not long after. He still lives with her and is as troubled as she is, or worse. The problem is they are both toxic, and he desperately seeks her approval but has never gotten it. I had to let him go as a way of avoiding further damage to my life and preventing him from destroying my belongings. As of yesterday, she was evicted from another apartment because he ripped out the sheetrock and plumbing after she refused to let him use her car to get a cigarette lighter. I did get custody of both my children and can report that child number 2 is a very loving and wonderful person. Child number one cost me a job and almost my sanity before I let him move in with her. Story 95. No matter what you do in life to succeed, you will get nowhere because you disrespect us. Just wait to see how God will give you consequences. My mom, just because I act on things now as an adult and she couldn't control me. I will kill you. I'm going to kill you. My dad, while he was choking me just because I was firmly saying no to attending a church service and asking if I could take a one-day break. I believe this is wrong coming from my own parents. They are supposed to be my home and support. Now, it has always been stuck in my mind. Since the day I got deported due to a lung scar, I always get heartbroken when I see people I know enjoying Dubai with their flexible time and jobs. Meanwhile, I had to walk on eggshells just to achieve my goals. It has been 6 months since it happened, and I am still unemployed. I think maybe this is my punishment and my mom is right. Story 96. My mother told my best friend to kill herself. She also told my sister to get over her best friend's death because it has been a month. You should move on now. My mother is very unkind. Story 97. My mom told me that I am the reason she wanted to kill herself. The reason? She thought I had told her I was molested. I did not. She made the whole thing up, and my siblings resent me because of her mental health. I honestly do not even know how to proceed with any of the relationships. Story 98. My mom told me she wishes she had aborted me, like Dad said. She said she was going to send me to jail, where I would be raped, her words. One time she blatantly said, I expected you to be the disappointment, not your brother. She thinks he is. And I am not because I had a job. I could go on about my mom. Edit. I forgot the worst one. I was at a rough point in my life and had overdosed. As I sat there dying, she screamed at me about how she was going to send me away, said I had no reason to be the way I am, and that I am a horrible son. Story 99. My mom used to tell me and my siblings to go kill ourselves when we were around 6 or 7 years old. At the time, I never realized how wrong that was, but now I see. Story 100. My husband had a coworker who was no older than 21. He ended up shooting himself in another coworker's car. The company had to show the 21-year-old's father the video footage. His own father called him a coward and walked out. Story 101. During the pandemic, I worked at Starbucks in a full lockdown state, but we were still open because we served food. A customer made a comment about how we should open everything back up again because the people who are at risk are not productive members of society anyway, and it would be natural selection. When I told her I was one of those people, she doubled down and told me if I had to die for the world to be normal again, then she hoped it happened sooner rather than later. I definitely went to the back and cried after that. As usual, my manager did nothing. Luckily, I never saw her again. Story 102. My husband's father called him the cancer of the family. The unemployed, far-right leech of a human could not understand why I punched him. Story 103. My dad said, well, fine, just go die then. To my mother, who had been battling cancer for 4 years. This was about a week before she passed. She tried everything the doctors suggested. They were just running out of options, and she was tired. He was holding her up at the time because her legs didn't work anymore, trying to get her ready for her next treatment. She said she didn't want to go anymore, and he said that while throwing her back on the bed. She was in the active dying stage anyway and had been for a month. I understand that he was angry he couldn't control the situation or save her, but to have that be some of the last things you said to your spouse of 30 years, I hope he regrets it. Story 104. If you move, you are no longer part of the family. These were his last words. Extra painful since, the year before, I was actively suicidal in my home country due to the environment and needed to leave. Apparently, going to university abroad is acceptable if you return to misery, but do not dare to actually try to be happy because he will not bother maintaining a relationship if you are not local. Story 105. When I was 16, I almost died. My spleen ruptured, and emergency surgery saved my life, but I was left with a foot-long scar right down the middle of my abdomen. Not 24 hours later, my older sister visited and asked to see my stomach. Her response was, I would rather be dead than have a scar like that. Although not as chilling as having a parent wish aloud that you had never been born, it was still pretty devastating to a teenager. Story 106. During the pandemic, I attended a virtual vigil for a child who had been shot to death by police during a mental health crisis. There was a panel of speakers from different organizations. The parents were also virtually present. One woman, I cannot remember who she was or why she was there, started her speech, and at some point, she addressed the parents and said, "I just want you to know that God has a reason for everything." My jaw dropped. I have never wanted to punch someone in the face more in my entire life. Maybe someone finds that comforting. If someone told me my loved one being murdered was for the greater good, they would probably have someone saying that to their family soon after. Story 107. That would be my father telling my mother that my severe chronic migraines were due to a lack of discipline. I was seeing one of the best migraine specialists in the country, and you think I was just making it up? Do you think going completely blind in one eye for a full day due to aura was me playing make-believe? Story 108. Lawyer here. My client was hit by a drugged-out and drunk driver in the middle of town just after leaving the spot where he volunteered. His death was brutal, as there were dozens of witnesses and 4 videos. The man who killed him was a local nepotism beneficiary, who, despite a lot of felonious behavior, was consistently released by the local police department, including the night he hit my client even though he was so intoxicated he could barely speak and certainly couldn't stand straight. Eventually, after causing another crash a week later, he was arrested because he had been actively using drugs on the dashboard while driving, and his scraggly mustache was covered in powder in body camera footage. While in jail, he apparently forgot that all jail calls are recorded. These calls were played at his sentencing for vehicular homicide. The prosecutor let the defense speak first, allowing the man's wife and father to plead on his behalf. They spun a tale of a poor kid who got mixed up in the wrong things and expressed that the family was sorry for all they had caused to my client's family. After allowing them to speak, the prosecutor presented recorded jail phone calls between the man and his wife and between the man and his father. In those calls, they disparaged my client and his family. They called them redneck hicks who deserved everything they got, and said, "The world is better off without that person." Their bigotry was inconsistent. In a lengthy exchange with his wife, she comforted him and told him it was fate, that it was just my client's time, and that my client's children were better off without him anyway. Maybe you did them a favor. My client's side of the courtroom was packed to the brink, and I have never felt 50 people collectively so seething with rage. Story 109. My adoptive mother screamed at me, telling me I was a mistake. She said she wished I had never been born and that I should have been aborted. This was all because someone at my school must have mentioned the bruises I had, and they thought I had reported them for beating me. Story 110. A guy I knew, we'll call him Jones, worked 2 jobs for over 2 years so his demon finance, we'll name her Cruella, could have the massive white wedding she had always wanted. She didn't contribute a single penny. They had been dating since grade school, and it was now after college. Jones was so in love with Cruella and just wanted her to have what she wanted. We all hated Cruella because she was one of the worst people I have ever known in as many years as I have been on this planet. A front-row churchgoer but loudly racist when she drank. Stuff like that. Jones and Cruella had the wedding, the honeymoon, and she opened all the gifts. A few months later, Jones saw police lights outside in the front yard. Cruella walked in the door of their apartment and said, "I slept with 2 guys at the bar. I'm just not ready to be married to you." He was speechless but asked why the police were there. "I got arrested because I slept with the guys on a pool table in front of a crowd. And I would have slept with the officer too if it would have gotten me out of trouble. He's attractive." It took 17 years, but Jones finally cut Cruella off after these events, and the divorce was final less than a year later. I hope you're okay, Jones, wherever you are. I'm glad you got the dog. Story 111. My friend's father said to his sister, "I should have let your mother drown you when you were a baby. I will never understand how she turned out all right with a father like that." Story 112. A few years ago, I was walking through the halls at lunch in school and saw 2 guys fighting. One of them said, "I swear to God, if you hit me again, I am going to harm your mother." Story 113. I am very tall for a woman. 2 men at a bar once told me, You would be perfect if we cut you off at the knees. Story 114. My father had just passed away, and I was supposed to visit a friend who lived with his parents. I made a call to his house just before coming over, and my dad's name must have been on the caller ID. After the visit, I was about to leave, and my friend's mother was standing in the kitchen deleting messages. Right in front of me, she saw my dad's name on the caller ID and said, "I thought that guy was dead," then laughed loudly, knowing I was standing right behind her. Story 115. My mother was my first bully. She told me to go play in traffic when I was 2 years old. She said she never wanted me and that no one would ever love me. Story 116. You put your children before me one too many times. I want a divorce, said my now ex-husband after I traveled out of state to take care of my daughter when she was diagnosed with cancer. Story 117. Overheard my lesbian boss say transgender people are not real. They are either gay or not. They cannot switch genders. It does not count. I had a neighbor who would yell at her child every day with things like, "You are the worst daughter in the world, and I wish you would just die." This caused me to have panic attacks every time. Story 118. There is a student fraternity where I am from where their word for women is bucket, as in a disrespectful term. They had a speech at a party that went viral because a man said men should break the neck of women to engage in sexual acts. The speech was met with loud cheering by all the men in the room. Story 119. Probably my half-little sister telling me, "You were never meant to exist," when I was about 10. Little did she know she would not have been born if I had not existed, which I found out later. Not to mention my father wanted me aborted, but he never said that to my face. Story 120. I have had 2 job roles in my life. I was in the army when I left school, and since then, I have worked in mental health services. I have heard a lot of disturbing things. I would not know where to start. Most of it I would just laugh off or forget shortly after hearing it. I did have to work once with a child sex offender as his key worker for about 18 months. He would talk openly about being a pedophile and seemed quite pleased with himself. It was obviously a conversation I would shut down quickly every time, but that was tough to hear. I still performed my job impartially and to the best of my ability. Story 121. A doctor told me to man up and be glad I was not pregnant. Even the nurse, a woman in her late 40s, looked at her as if she had just confessed to something terrible. She had just informed me I had silicosis at a higher level of severity and only had about 10 to 15 years left to live at 34 years old. Like, okay, great, pregnancy is dangerous, oh no. How does pregnancy even compare to a terminal diagnosis? And how is it somehow considered worse? That marked the end of my respect for female practitioners because she was the 5th female medical professional to tell me to man up and get over something while comparing it to a female-specific issue. Now, every female doctor or nurse practitioner I see is treated with cold respect until they prove they deserve better because I was done being treated poorly while being expected to show utmost respect. Story 122. Not the most upsetting, but it hurt me. I was struggling with anxiety and could barely get myself off the couch some days. I found some things on my husband's phone, and he kept denying, saying, "I don't have a reason to cheat." I told him he does because he doesn't seem happy anymore. He then told me that he hated coming home to me sitting on the couch. I told him I've been struggling with my mental health, and he said, "That's a sorry excuse." A week later, I still think about it almost every second of the day. Story 123. I was a child at a church activity. We received holy water for some reason. As we were leaving, a child spilled their glass. The child's mother, in a very pointed and angry tone, said, "Pick up your bubbles." Reflecting as an adult, I wonder why you would send your child to church if you think so little of your own religion. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.